Double game week 33 could just be an absolute disaster for FPL managers, and in this video we're going to be explaining why this is going to be the case, what we're going to be doing about it, the wildcard going forward, what's the best strategy from here. If you're an FPL fan and you're not subscribed to this channel, what are you doing? We do daily FPL content, and also as well we're going to be doing a wildcard team tomorrow for the best team with all the FA Cup fixtures taken into consideration. So do subscribe to this channel and drop a like down below as well. It'd be very greatly appreciated. We've got to start off by talking about these FA Cup results because of course this is the most important thing and why double game week 33 could just be an absolute disaster for FPL managers. So in the first game in the earlier kickoff, it was Crystal Palace versus Fulham. Crystal Palace won 3-0, meaning that Crystal Palace already doubling game week 32 and potentially now could double game week in game week 33. We'll discuss that in a bit more depth later on in the video, but it could be game week 33 or it could be game week 36. As I say, I'll discuss that later. Then in the later game, Nottingham Forest played against Brighton and won on penalties 4-3. What a masterclass by Matt Sells. So that meaning that Nottingham Forest, we would think, could double in game week 33, but as I'll explain later in the video, this might not be the case anymore. So starting off just talking about the double game week that could go in game week 33. Now this, because as I say, could also maybe double in game week 36. It's just very much more likely to be the case in double game week 33 due to Crystal Palace having an FA Cup semi-final now to play as well. The most likely outcome is that this game will double in game week 33, meaning that Crystal Palace will double against Bournemouth and Arsenal. So that would also then give Arsenal a double game week as well in game week 33. As I say, this isn't absolutely 100%. This is just what we expect. So Arsenal then could double in game week 33 against Ipswich and Crystal Palace, meaning in our wildcard teams, of course, we're going to be targeting Crystal Palace players. They double in game week 33 and the likelihood is quite high in them doubling in game week 33 as well. So two back-to-back doubles there for Crystal Palace as well. And also these fixtures probably won't get absolutely confirmed and locked in until game week 31, until in between that deadline. So we won't know in game week 30, as I say, we'll have to wait for the next game week for that. That's why the wildcard might be better for holding off, but we'll discuss that a little bit more. But as I say, then Arsenal do also double as well against Ipswich and Crystal Palace, which is a pretty kind double game week, you'd say, for Arsenal. So definitely teams that will be looking to target, of course, on this wildcard going forward now would be Arsenal. Arsenal players, of course, a triple up on Arsenal and then a triple up on Crystal Palace as well. Now, getting into the details about the Nottingham Forest versus Brighton result. Now, this is actually where it gets very interesting. We were expecting whoever won in the FA Cup to then go ahead and double in game week 33 and blank in game week 34. But now, it has actually come out that Nottingham Forest are playing in game week 33 and game week 35, both on Monday nights, which then makes a midweek fixture pretty much impossible. Meaning then that this fixture could potentially then get rearranged for game week 34 as the most likely outcome right now, that game against Brentford. So as I say, we were expecting it to be a Nottingham Forest double in game week 33. That is probably not going to be the case, just judging it off this and judging how Nottingham Forest fixture schedule is currently. So as I say, this could get put into midweek in game week 34, then meaning that Nottingham Forest wouldn't blank in game week 34, but then they also wouldn't double game week in game week 33, which then only puts, as I say, the confirmed doubles right now recording this video only being Crystal Palace and Arsenal. We'll talk about the other doubles later on in the video. But as I say, this game could potentially just get put in at game week 34, meaning that Nottingham Forest won't double and then they also won't blank as well in game week 34, which of course then makes the bench boost in game week 33 a little bit more difficult. It makes the wild card also a little bit more challenging as well, in terms of we don't know who's going to be, we don't know where this Nottingham Forest game is actually going to get put in, because it could get put in later potentially as well, maybe a game week 36. So this is what Nottingham Forest's schedule would look like if they did get the game put into game week 36, which as we say is unlikely because it could be a very busy schedule due to the fact that Nottingham Forest might even get to the FA Cup final if they get through the semi-final. But as I say, their fixture would then look like game week 36. It would then be Leicester with a double game week then with that Brentford fixture getting put in there. As I say, that's quite unlikely. Then it would be game week 37, the FA Cup final. You couldn't imagine them having that many fixtures in that short amount of time. You would imagine this double game week or this game week for Nottingham Forest would get put in at an earlier stage, at probably game week 34 as it suggests here. So as I say, this does actually affect the double game weeks and the blank game weeks quite drastically. So the chance of Nottingham Forest being in a blank game, playing in blank game week 34 is definitely higher now, which then means that there'll be less teams doubling in game week 33. Now, as I say, we got Arsenal, we got Crystal Palace that are already confirmed as double game weeks, not for 33, but double game weeks at some point. Then you're looking at it as well, you've obviously got Aston Villa and Manchester City as well. There's a very likely that those two teams will double in game week 33. To be honest, we'll all be becoming Bournemouth fans in that FA Cup game. We want Aston Villa to beat Preston from an FPL perspective, and then we'd want Bournemouth to beat Man City in the FA Cups. Then Bournemouth will double, and then as well as that, Man City and Aston Villa will also double as well. That's the ideal outcome. But as I say, if Man City win their FA Cup game and Aston Villa win their FA Cup game, which they're both favourites for, that would then mean only 4 teams double in game week 34, and then therefore that would actually mean that only 4 teams then blank in game week 34, which, as I say, from the free hit, for the bench boost, it definitely puts things a lot more up in the air in terms of what we actually do with our chip strategy going forward. Because if only 4 teams are going to blank in game week 34, then realistically, with our free hit chip, we could probably navigate it anyway without actually using our free hit chip, and maybe wait for a potential double in game week 36 later down the line. But for players we need to be targeting from here, now Bukayo Saka is actually back in training for Arsenal. He could be somebody by the time he gets to game week 33 that could be definitely someone that we could be considering. But other than that, I do think as Arsenal assets, the 2 Arsenal defenders in probably David Raya as the goalie, and then Gabriel is probably the best outcome for an Arsenal for an Arsenal perspective in terms of a double up. And then the third player is definitely up in the air. And this on this screenshot here, this wildcard team, I've got Marino, but I probably wouldn't be going for Marino, to be honest. It depends on what's happening with Saka and who's kind of playing up front in that Arsenal attacking area. We don't really know. Like, it's not really a standout pick if Saka's not playing, to be honest. Like, going forward, Arsenal aren't, they aren't exactly the best without Saka. There's Ødegaard, who's definitely an option. There's a few players that could be decent options, but without Bukayo Saka, there's no, as I say, standout option. But a double Arsenal defence is definitely pretty much going to be a lock-in at this point if they are going to be doubling game week 33, which looks likely. And then probably one Arsenal attacker. It could be Saka if he's fit. There's Marino, which I'm not a big fan of. There's also maybe a Trossard. There's a few options. There's Ødegaard. There's a few options, but as I say, there's not really any standout one for Arsenal if Saka's not going to be 100% fit. And then as well as that, from a Crystal Palace perspective, you can maybe go for a draw. I'd be definitely having a triple up with them doubling in game week 32 and game week 33. But the question is, what is the best double up of the Crystal Palace assets? As you can see, this is their projected fixtures on screen now. Southampton in game week 30, Brighton in game week 31. Then we have that locked in double game week against Man City and Newcastle in game week 32. And then as well as that, Bournemouth versus Bournemouth and then Arsenal in double game week 33 if that fixture does get confirmed. Now, the Crystal Palace defenders, they're all decent options, to be fair. You can even go for a Gahey, but realistically, the standouts defensively are Henderson in goal and then Daniel Munoz. Now, with Henderson, we were discussing before about David Raya. I personally think David Raya is probably the best goalkeeper to go for going forward on a wild card. So for me, that kind of eliminates the chances in me bringing in Henderson. I don't think Henderson's a bad option. I think he's actually a very good option. In terms of Palace have been absolutely ridiculous since like November time, since like the turn of the year especially, they've been ridiculous. So Henderson's not a bad shout, but when you take everything else into consideration, maybe it's best to avoid Henderson and go for a David Raya. But I don't think Henderson's a bad option. As I say, Palace are solid defensively. They've been very good defensively since pretty much they've hit form, as I say, since November. But then defensively, Daniel Munoz is just a number 1 defensive option for Crystal Palace. There's no 2 ways about it. Like, the other options aren't bad. You can have a Mitchell who's nailed on. There's a Gahey who's nailed on if you wanted to. But Daniel Munoz is just the best realistic. As I say, great going forward. Palace have been very solid. So Daniel Munoz will be an absolute lock-in in my wildcard team in terms of a Crystal Palace defender, and I'd probably just be going for 1 Crystal Palace defender for me. And then going on to the midfielders and attackers. Now, Ismail Assar did score in the FA Cup, and as well as that, Eberechi Eze did also score and got an assist as well. Eze's really starting to hit form at the right time for Crystal Palace, obviously getting a goal for England as well recently, and then as well as that, of course, getting a goal and assist for Crystal Palace. An unbelievable goal, by the way, today in the FA Cup. So then you've got Ismail Assar as well, who also did get a goal assisted by Eze, and again, he looks like a very good option at just 5.6 million or 5.7 million. A very cheap way into that Crystal Palace midfield, so I don't mind that at all. Eze I actually do quite like the look of, to be honest, right now. As I say, he's starting to hit form. We've seen how good Eze's been over the years for Crystal Palace. I'm a QPR fan. I've watched Eze for so much. I've watched Eze, and he's an absolute unbelievable player. And the way that he's come into form at the right time, it really is perfect timing for these fixtures coming up with potentially the back-to-back double game weeks and the fixture against Southampton. And I feel like a lot of people will probably be going for Ismail Assar, but Eze could be that differential as well. And at this point, they're going to be pretty differential, to be fair. I wouldn't say they're going to be massively owned, Ismail Assar and Eze. They're getting a lot of transfers in, but it depends how many people are going to end up wildcard and how many people are actually going to be able to get them transfers into Ismail Assar or Eberechi Eze. And then there's also Mateta as well. Now, Mateta obviously did kind of play with an earpiece in, whatever it was, after that injury that he got against Millwall in the FA Cup in the previous round. But he is fit and available and ready to play. He didn't get any contributions in that game against Fulham in the FA Cup, but he is definitely an option going forward. And as I say, with them fixtures, I think he's a great option. So those 3 attackers for Crystal Palace, realistically, you're probably only going to be choosing 2 of them. So it's up to you what kind of the structure of your team and what you want to go for, because you might be wanting to go for maybe even a double Man City attack with Haaland and Marmoush, who's very likely to double in game week 33. You also could probably have an isak in there for that double game week 32. So it kind of depends on how you go about it with your personal wildcard team and which structure you actually want to go for. Because there's also some good midfielders which could look very good going forward in double game week 33 and just beyond that as well. So discussing my top 3 favourite Crystal Palace assets. Now, Daniel Munoz, I've spoken before. I just think he's an absolute lock-in. I think if you're not going for Munoz on your wildcard, then I've got to be questioning you. So Daniel Munoz for me is just an absolute lock-in in that wildcard. It doesn't really need to be discussed at all, just how good he is going forward, and Palace are decent, as I say, defensively. Then you've got Eze. Now, it's either between him or Sarr, in my opinion. I'm personally going to be probably going for Mateta in my team. We'll discuss him in a second. But it's out of Eze and Sarr. It depends on the structure of your team. It depends on how much budget you've got. As I say, I don't think it's much between them at all. If I was to choose one right now, I'd actually choose Eze. But as I say, it depends on the structure of your team. It depends on what wildcard team you're going to be going for. It depends on if you're wildcarding this week or not. And it depends on just the overall situation of your team. But for me, I actually do think Eze could do better than Ismail Sarr with the form that he's in over the next few weeks. As I say, it's going to be very close between the two. It's up to you who you want to go for. But I personally would just prefer Eze slightly. Now, Mateta obviously didn't return in the FA Cup, which is frustrating because obviously he's got that kind of injury. Is he going to be playing 100% when he's got that kind of... I don't know. I guess it is a distraction when you're playing, to be honest. You're not going to be playing at your 100% best, I guess. Or maybe I'm just absolutely waffling. But Mateta I still think is a great option. Just that Southampton fixture as well looks so tempting to have a Crystal Palace striker against Crystal Palace against Southampton sounds very, very tempting. And with the double game weeks after that, I do personally like going for one defender from Palace in Munoz, one midfielder in Eze, and then one forward in Mateta. But let me know what you think of that in the comments. And as for Arsenal assets, I do just think as the goalkeeper, the best option is just David Raya going forward. Arsenal aren't exactly spoiled. I mean, they're obviously second in the league and they're a very good team. But in terms of FPL assets, they're not absolutely spoiled for choice in terms of standouts. Now, David Raya's done very well over the course of the season. Arsenal get a lot of clean sheets. They're the best defence in the league statistically over the course of the season in terms of defensive numbers. And as I say, David Raya's done very well over the course of the season and not many options as well. Meaning that David Raya for me is the number one goalkeeper going forward with that double game week, hopefully in game week 33. And a decent enough run of fixtures for Arsenal. And as I say, they're very good defensively. As for another Arsenal defender, I just think Gabriel's going to be pretty much a lock. And he's in most people's teams already at this point, to be honest. And he's got that attacking threat, although he hasn't scored in a long time, to be fair. But he has got that attacking threat from set pieces. And as well as that, we know how solid Arsenal are defensively. And as I said before, we're not spoiled for choice. So having a Raya and a Gabriel, I do think is just the best options going forward in terms of the two standout options for Arsenal for me are those two. And then as for the third option, now this depends on who's going to be fit and available. I think Bukayo Saka, if he's getting back into it, he is now actually in training once again. But there still could be quite a while till he actually starts seeing regular minutes. But then by the time it gets to game week 33, he could be that third Arsenal asset if he's fit and firing again, ready for double game week 33. He's going to be a lock-in for most people's teams and everybody's going to be moving towards him. So as I say, it's kind of a wait and see with Bukayo Saka. I don't think he's in game week 30. He's really going to be... I don't think he's even going to be in the squad, to be honest, for game week 30. I'd be surprised if he is. So as I say, we'll have to wait and see on Bukayo Saka. But I think by the time it gets to game week 33, he could be an excellent option. But in the meantime, you could just go for somebody else and then move to Bukayo Saka at a later date. But I do think on a wild card, probably just going for two of Gabriel and Raya, just going for both of them, or go for whichever Arsenal defenders you like the look of. It could be a Timber, someone like that. If you wanted to go for someone like that, I just think the two best Arsenal players are the goalkeeper and then one of Arsenal's defenders. So as I say, the teams that we need to be looking to target on the wildcard, I'm going to do a proper wildcard video tomorrow, but just discussing some teams. Arsenal, of course, the team to be targeting. Now, Crystal Palace are an absolute essential to have a triple on Crystal Palace at this point. Man City and Aston Villa assets potentially, as they could be doubling in game week 33. And then Newcastle, we know, are got a double game week in game week 32. So pretty much a lock-in as a triple up on Newcastle as well. Probably is the way to go forward as well. So let me know what you think of this in the comment section down below. Not ideal with only 4 teams potentially blanking in game week 33, double game week 33. And then only 4 teams blanking in game week 34. It does make it a little bit difficult with the free hit and the wild card. As I say, we'll know a lot more by the time it gets to game week 31, and we'll know a lot more by the time these FA Cup games are finished tomorrow as well. If you're an FPL fan, do subscribe to this channel, it'd be greatly appreciated. Drop a like if you enjoyed. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.